Good afternoon, everyone. This is a brand new episode of the Off Topical podcast. You said it wouldn't happen, but I knew it would one day. With me today, I have my friend Wolfgang. How's it going, Wolfgang?
Hey, Gardner. Yeah, it's going pretty good. Thank you for having me.
Dude, you're welcome. I'm really glad that we were able to do this today. There was a lot of things that kind of came up that I thought maybe wouldn't let this happen today, but you know what? We're doing it. We're here. We're ready to go.
Against all the odds.
And before we get into the show, I wanted to take a moment and thank today's sponsor, Linode. Yeah, that's right. We have a sponsor now. Linode started in 2003 as one of the first cloud computing companies in the space, 3 years before AWS and other enterprise providers. Linode provides virtual servers that make it easy and affordable for you to host anything in the cloud. Building your own website? Most entry-level hosting services are fine for a while, but if you want to be in control, do what you want, and actually own your website, Linode is your step up to powerful, totally customizable cloud hosting. So whether you're into gaming, stuck on a proprietary website builder, or just need to put something on the cloud and access it anywhere in the world, Linode is there for you. Every plan comes with Linode's amazing human-powered customer support. If you need help, someone will pick up the phone, respond to your email, or reply to you on socials 24/7, 365. If it runs on Linux, it runs on Linode. Off-Topical listeners get a special deal from Linode, $100 60-day credit on new Linode accounts. Get started now by visiting linode.com/offtopical to get your $100 credit today. And thanks again to Linode for sponsoring this episode. So today, what are we going to be talking about, Wolfgang?
We have a lot of Huawei talking points today, don't we?
Yeah, we do. The Huawei, I don't know how to pronounce it. Huawei disinformation campaign. Did you hear about this? This is like crazy.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, they've got the basically the representatives from Huawei are like doing this campaign against like the Bulgarian government because the Belgian, I said Bulgarian, yeah.
Yeah, Europe is all one place, it's very confusing.
Right, yeah, Africa is a country.
True.
But Belgium has regulations in place against Huawei and infrastructure being used in the development of their 5G network, right? And personally, I think that's a good thing. What do you think about that?
I'm kind of split on that because I didn't read enough on the whole Huawei 5G situation. From what I've heard, basically American government banned all the American companies from working with Huawei without having a special a special order thingy? License, exactly, thank you.
Yeah.
And yeah, some researchers discovered that Huawei is they're in a... Okay, you could say that they're working together with the Chinese government, with the Chinese ruling party, and that they're doing something sketchy with the security equipment, with the 5G equipment. And since Huawei's 5G equipment is used pretty much everywhere, they're one of the leading vendors for all the 5G towers, 5G equipment. This is kind of opening up a potential security, attack surface, you could say, where basically every city and every company that deploys 5G on premises or elsewhere, there would be they would have their infrastructure would have those exploits from Huawei in them.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, it's with this kind of equipment, even if there doesn't exist a backdoor in it, just the fact that currently, you know what I'm saying? Even if there's not a backdoor currently, I think the fact that Huawei is owned by the Chinese party, the Chinese Communist Party, virtually guarantees that there will eventually be some kind of backdoor. There has to be. I just can't see it as any other way, So for me, it's it's kind of, I think it's a good thing that Western countries are passing legislation against, including critical infrastructure that's made by these Chinese companies that are owned by the Communist Party. And the fact is, Huawei knows that these nations are doing this, so they hired a lawyer to pen an article criticizing the regulations that have been put in place here. And what's crazy about this, though, is that there have been a couple of people who have found out that Huawei is using social media to like prop up this article that's critical and like spread this article out into the world. So at least 14 academic industry professionals and experts shared this article across Twitter, right? Mm-hmm. The problem is that they are actually sock puppet accounts, and Huawei officials in Europe actually retweeted these fake accounts, and did Kevin Liu, Huawei's Twitter verified president, and it's like or president of public affairs in Western Europe. And it's like he had a following of 1.1 million people. So it would have been one thing if like this real dude had like tweeted out this article, but like Huawei used like these fake accounts, and a lot of them had actually been like sock puppeted with AI generated faces, profile pictures, AI generated like content on their accounts. And then they also posted this article, which then Huawei representatives retweeted to give it a more of a look of authenticity. I don't know. It's just crazy to me. What do you think about that, man?
Yeah, it's really wild. Like the fact that, first of all, this Brussels-based lawyer basically risked his license because he's going to lose his bar license over that, if I'm not mistaken, right? And they must have paid him a lot of money, right? Like, so for him, like, to actually risk his entire career and his life, I mean, work, I guess, it's crazy. Yeah. And just the fact that they went to so much, they just went to so much trouble to kind of like make those what's the word that I'm looking for? To actually operate those. All the trouble. Yeah, they went to all this trouble to like create and operate those sock puppet accounts. It's just crazy. And yeah, I mean, I don't exactly know whose idea that was, but like from where I'm seeing it, it wasn't worth it, and it would have been discovered eventually, no matter like how big of an authority is the person who's spreading the fake news, basically.
Right. Yeah, and it's like, part of me is like, I do feel bad for this lawyer who's going to lose his license, but at the same time, he accepted payment for writing this article from Huawei. And it's like, and he's, I guess this guy had a reputation of being like anti-regulation, but it's like, I believe I read that, but it's like, are you anti-regulation or are you just selling your opinion to the highest bidder?
Exactly.
Like, that's the thing that drives me nuts. It's like you could have, maintained, this guy could have like had a reputation, but he was just willing to sell it. And I think that's like kind of the grossest thing about all this. Like, yeah, I mean, like you said, like fake profiles on Twitter and stuff. It's like, yeah, people are going to find that out probably. But like, I can't fathom that someone that smart, someone who went to law school wouldn't realize that was risking his career. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I guess he did, but he still somehow thought that people are never going to find it out. And there's like the one more aspect that I want to talk about is just like the fact that these kind of these cases, these kind of I don't know, like the things that go viral that way, when a certain publication or a scientific article turns out to be complete fake, they pretty much they really hurt just the overall like scientific world and the role of like the authority of science among like average Joe people who who don't necessarily know all that much about science, who just they would see an article, and the more of those cases we have where science and just in general like scientific articles and everything that is associated with like science is weaponized to push some kind of a, I wouldn't say agenda in here, but push basically to shill for a certain company. The more disenfranchised it becomes, and the less trust people have in the whole science, because if I read something that claims to be scientific article, how do I know it's not fake? How do I know it's not, it's not being written to be weaponized against or for a certain company?
Yeah. I mean, and that's like a problem that's like been more and more prevalent lately too, where it's like, I believe I read an article a couple of months ago about how there, fewer and fewer papers are actually being peer reviewed before they're published too, because there's such a glut of like rush to press publication, of like scientific papers. And so it's like when you live in a world where there's so much information and so little fact checking, and I think you're kind of naive to not be skeptical of things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. It kind of also rings true for fact checking as well, because recently there's been like a lot of fact checking websites, and at the same time a lot of people are like coming forward and they're saying, yeah, fact checking like has become political, and like you shouldn't believe the fact checking anymore, and in some cases it goes to extremes where people just refuse to believe science altogether, and they go, yeah, all science is basically bought out. Like it serves a political agenda, and like the fact that those fake scientific articles or just poorly written ones, they discredit science and make people basically disregard all like the science altogether, even the good sides of it. This is very dangerous, I find.
Yeah, I agree completely. I yeah, it's and we like I said, I mean, we live in a world of it just seems like there's so much disinformation now, right? And it's like companies like this are posting all of their articles and creating fake posts on these platforms, and then the company's executives are pushing these fake posts to try and like bolster the credibility of the things that they're sharing. And like, I don't know, like, do you have any ideas of like what can be done to like address this? I mean, I kicked the hornet's nest a couple of weeks ago when I made a video. I don't know if you saw it, but where I had a couple ideas of what can be done for this. But I'm interested in like, what do you think should be done about like disinformation on the internet?
Yeah, it's a very complicated topic, and the fact that
Yeah.
the so-called big tech, quote unquote, still hasn't
Hmm.
solved the problem. It says something. Us two are probably not going to solve it. Like during this podcast,
Oh,
obviously.
come on. You
Yeah.
don't think we can solve this problem, dude? Come on.
Yeah, maybe I'm being a little bit too modest here, but yeah, I don't quite think we will manage that like over the course of 1 hour or something. But yeah, it's complicated. And like on one hand, you don't want to just censor stuff that is like that is disinformation. Like you don't want to just flat out delete everything that, somehow seems to you like disinformation, because then there is like this dilemma of who watches the watchman, right? Who decides
Right.
what's disinformation and what's not? Because obviously if I say, I don't know, like earth is flat, or if I say 2 plus 2 equals 5, that's a clear cut disinformation. It has been proven
Right.
wrong. It's not true, right? And it can be dangerous in some cases. I mean, obviously
Yeah.
not when I say 2 plus 2 equals 5, but you get the point. But then
Right.
there are cases where it's not as clear cut as you would think, and
Yeah.
like the this like this fringe between disinformation and just kind of twisting the fact to serve your like opinion or, I don't know, agenda.
Yeah.
It's not as clear. And yeah, I guess like if you do get, I don't know, quote unquote censored, well, or should we say just your post or your tweet is deleted because you have violated the TOS or something like that, you can obviously make this point. It's like, I'm being silenced for just saying the facts, or something like that. A lot of people have done it. I'm not going to point any fingers, but we see that very often on social media.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough problem to face, because on the one hand, you do want people to be able to say what's on their mind and to be able to have like good faith arguments, right? Like, if you believe that the Earth is flat, then I mean you're wrong. But at the same time, like, should you be censored for saying that? I don't think that you should. Like, but I also like find that for me, like I like to reserve the like the word censorship for like the truly egregious violation of free speech, which would be like if your government decides you cannot say this, that, and the other thing, right? Because like, if you signed if you have signed a terms of service, you have signed if you click the I agree button next to a terms of service, you have signed a contract with that company. And it's like, if you violate their rules, like every platform has rules, and whether they enforce them equally or not, I guess that's up for debate. But like, the problem that I have is like, who actually gets to decide what's authoritative and what's true? And that's a problem that a lot of people have on both sides of this issue, right?
I personally don't think that the definition of censorship that you use is entirely correct, because when people say, yeah, when Twitter deletes your tweets because you're violating the TOS, it's not censorship because it doesn't come from the government. So like the censorship by definition is something that comes from the government. But at the same time, I feel like if you take those platforms like Twitter and Facebook, the really big platforms with like a huge amount of people that use them, I mean, you can't, like, in some cases where they take up a liberty to arbitrarily delete people's posts, I wouldn't say all of those cases is censorship, because censorship is the word that is overused a lot these days. You would post, I don't know, you would post like a racial slur in Twitter deletes it, and then you go like, I'm being silenced, it's literally 1984, oh my god, what is happening, or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like that's overused in a lot of cases, but then at the same time there's this very uncomfortable reality of a huge platform that is used by a lot of people, and then this platform, the people who run this platform get to decide what flies and what doesn't fly on their platform. And like, even though in a lot of cases, the use of the ban hammer is justified, I feel like, yeah, that's like something that we really need to think about, and just to kind of internalize it, the fact that what you are allowed to say in a public like forum and what you're not allowed to say is often not like for government to decide these days, but like for those big platforms.
Yeah, no, I agree. And here's the thing: like, people say censorship all the time, and I hear like Orwellian and like something described as like 1984, like Orwellian, right?
Oh yeah.
But my question is, like, Orwellian often like describes like the concept of like Big Brother and like who watches the watchers, like you mentioned. But like for me, I think it's just as Orwellian for a platform like Facebook or Twitter to allow people to just parrot lies constantly, so much so that that other people start to believe those lies. Like, that's just as prevalent in 1984. Now, granted, it's like the authoritative lie that comes from like Big Brother or whatever. But I think that like it seems just as Orwellian to me that people can be parroting these lies and inculcating people into like this cult of disinformation.
Yeah, that's true. Like, something that a lot of people don't realize is that the decision to like not delete some piece of misinformation or like a certain tweet is as political as a decision to delete it. And yeah. I know that I've heard, there's this like, I don't know, like there's like a lot of inside information from those companies that the Facebook and Twitter, they're terrified of being seen as political or as like censorious. Is that a word? Like
censorious. I don't know.
Oh,
like yeah. Like
it's a word now. Yeah. It's a word now.
Yeah, you've coined it. Yeah.
Yeah. They're just terrified of being seen as those like censors and someone who's like banning people for speaking their mind or whatever. So yeah, oftentimes they're very doubtful in certain cases whether to like delete or ban someone. But at the same time, whether you want to keep something on a platform or delete it, both of those decisions are political. Like you can't just wish-wash your way out of this. like like
Right.
by being, oh, I don't want to be political, like, and delete this, because you will be. It's
Right.
inevitable.
Yeah, and the fact that these companies have like for years and years said like, "Oh, well, we stand for free speech. We stand for free speech." When I mean, I don't necessarily believe that that was ever the case, right? Like I said in one of my recent videos, like these guys have used it as marketing jargon, right? As a way of like, oh yeah, yeah, come to our platform and say whatever you want. But like in reality, that was never the case. But they've like kind of cornered themselves into this area where it's like, you know, they never actually stood for free speech. The reason that they said that they did was because they just didn't want to moderate their websites, you know, section 203 or whatever of the safe harbor provision or whatever it is. But it's never been like, I've always felt like that was disingenuous of them to say that. And even Valve have done that, right? Do you remember that game Hatred on Steam?
Not quite, no.
So Hatred was like a 3/4 top-down perspective game, and it was like it was just like ultra violent, and like you would shoot people and they would like suffer before they died, right? It was grotesque and it was
Okay.
unnecessary. And Valve was like, "Well, we're not going to delete that because we stand for free speech." When in reality, they just didn't want to take responsibility for what's actually
True.
going up on their platform. And that kind of stuff really bothers me. It's like, why do these companies why are they so averse to wanting to like actually make their platform a better place to be? And part of me thinks that it comes back to like the Apple thing, right? Like Apple is successful because their products are in most ways inferior, but because they are restricted in certain ways, that's what makes people feel like their products are better. You know what I'm saying? Like Apple is like, oh yeah, we're going to remove a feature and we're going to say, and that's what makes us brave. And then everyone's going to go, oh my goodness, yes, I love this idea. And
Yeah, I
that
see what you
like gives
mean.
like, it feeds into that elitism. And so by having inferior products, it actually like does things like it manipulates the market in a way that brings people in. And I don't know. I just kind of lost my train of thought there.
Yeah. I mean, I know that this opinion that, you know, Apple is removing features and like that's why they're popular is a popular opinion. But at the same time, you know, companies like Samsung and, you know, Xiaomi even, they would start off by mocking Apple for removing stuff like, you know, a charger from the box or removing a like 3.5 millimeter jack. But they will turn around and do the same because they'll be like,
Yeah.
oh, look, Apple did this. So like, first, we can get away with this, and second, it actually might make us more popular because we like Apple. But at the same time,
Right.
they're kind of copying Apple's disadvantages, like the limitations, the removed features, but they don't copy what makes Apple so popular. I mean, obviously, there are a lot of things that make people buy Apple products. It's not just the Apple. It's not just the brand. I feel like because if it was just a brand, it would be just another, you know, elite niche company like Vertu. I don't know if you remember the Vertu
Right.
phones.
Yeah, I do.
But like Apple products, they do have certain features that you would say I mean, you could say that they're appealing to like tech illiterate people or like normies, quote unquote. But
Yeah.
at the same time, most people are normies. And even like
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you are like, I don't know, a C programmer with like 30 years of experience, when you come home, when you like open your personal laptop or your computer, or I mean your phone, you take it from the pocket. You don't want to be a sysadmin again. You don't want to come back to work by having to solve like all of those problems, like all those little problems that exist on like let's say Android phones, for example. You want stuff to like just work, you know, just like Steve Jobs said, you know, it just works. And obviously that's not entirely true anymore. Like Apple devices don't just work in a lot of cases, but at the same time, I feel like for like normal people, it's much easier to like make sense of iOS because it's consistent like over the devices. You
Yeah.
know, you have like I don't know iOS 6 and iOS 14, the current version. It's been more than 10 years. but it has kind of stayed the same ever since. And on Android, even if you like take a look at like the difference between the Android skins, like in like within one version, but between like Xiaomi and let's say like Samsung or Huawei, you're gonna get lost. Like there's just so many
Yeah.
differences, and it's like theoretically that's just one Android version.
Right. Yeah, no, and I definitely agree with that. And I'm also like not trying to like crap on Apple because they have been. I mean, they're one of the most successful companies in the history of the world. And you know, if it wasn't for the Librem 5, I probably would have ended up with an iPhone as my next phone. Like I'm not even lying. But I don't know. I just feel like they do limit their products, and they do it in a way that is meant to foster their elitism.
Yeah,
And
I guess you're right. Like to some extent.
yeah, I'm not sure what we were even talking about anymore. How did we get on this topic?
Huawei disinformation campaign and the whole
Oh,
like
right.
social media free speech shenanigans.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, and with Huawei, the Biden administration actually signaled that they're not planning on lifting the Huawei restrictions that were put in place by the Trump administration. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, actually, they still pretty much Huawei is still not allowed to use Google Apps and Google Play, right?
I don't think they're allowed to.
Because last
Yeah.
I checked, they like you couldn't get Google Play or Google Store, all the other apps, like with the conventional methods on Huawei devices.
Right. Yeah, so it looks like they're still not able to use them, and the reason that they're not is actually because I think you mentioned it earlier. In order to Huawei has and a couple other Chinese companies have actually been put on a restricted trade list, right? And so basically, what that trade list does is it requires U.S. firms to obtain a license from the government if they want to sell American tech or intellectual property to companies on that list. And let's see here. What's her name?
Gina Raimondo.
Gino Raimondo. Yeah. So she's the nominee. And during the nomination process, Senate Republicans sent her written questions, and she replied about when she was asked about Huawei and being on the restricted trade list. She said, "I understand that parties are placed on the entity list and the military and user list generally because they pose a risk to U.S. national security or foreign policy interests." And she said, "I currently have no reason to believe that entities on those lists should not be there. If confirmed, I look forward to briefing on these entities and other concerns and others of concern." So, yeah, I mean, it looks like Huawei's there and they're going to stay there. And she said that she's also in lockstep with the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, when it comes to the prohibition of goods made with forced labor. So this is talking about like is it the Uyghur minority in China?
I mean, I haven't heard any information that specifically says that Huawei is like utilizing the Uyghurs labor camps
Right.
for like to make phones and other tech. But at the same
Right.
time, I do know that there are issues in China with like the labor rights, and it's been like a hot topic since a while, just with like Apple's Foxconn
Right.
factories, like just basically employing people and keeping them in non-human conditions and paying them like what was it, $1 per day or something like that. But at
Yeah.
the same time,
Something crazy.
at the same time, if they want to restrict like companies from using forced labor, well, they'll have to pretty much like exclude every tech company out there because they're all like
Yeah.
utilizing this kind of like cheap labor from China and other countries.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of scary that like people are so accustomed to like the cheap manufacturing of like China that they're willing to look the other way. A lot of people are when it comes to these issues. Like personally, I think like I don't know. I wish that it was like easier for end users. I don't like the term consumers, but I wish that it was easier for consumers to know like the manufacturing chain, to know like, oh, this was made in a factory that uses like forced labor, I'm not going to buy it. But like, I feel like we're in the dark about that a lot of the time, and it's hard to make ethical decisions with your purchases when you don't have that kind of information available to you, you know?
Exactly. And then there's also this line between, forced labor, like, outright slavery, where people are handed like cuffs and, I don't know, chained to like I don't know, to like to a lamppost and just are forced to work basically. And then there's just kind of like crappy conditions, like no toilet breaks, like just very, very like unsanitary working conditions, bad pay, no health insurance, all that. But then at the same time, if you kind of apply those, if you apply this framework and those requirements, then you can pretty much just like close Amazon because
I know. Yeah, you were saying like, not allowed to have bathroom breaks, and I'm like, so working for Amazon. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the stuff that like Amazon drivers have to go through is insane.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of, did you hear about the AI-equipped cameras that are being added to their delivery vans?
Yes, that is truly Orwellian, if you may.
For real.
I mean, like I don't like this term being overused, as we already discussed. But if there was like one case where you could use the term Orwellian and not exaggerate, this is it. Like,
of course, absolutely. But I'm an AI skeptic. I don't know about you. I think that like it's a cool technology, but like for every funny meme and like TikTok filter, I think there's like this like looming possibility of things going horribly wrong for like this, for example. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you mean. And like personally, I'm constantly oscillating between, oh my God, we're all gonna die. It's gonna be Skynet, just like in the Terminator movies, and like AI is a marketing gimmick, and it's just like basically people, especially like those managers and like product managers, I guess you could say, they would excuse me. So like project managers and at IT companies, they would constantly try to like sell something as AI, like revolutionary technology, like in computer intelligence and whatever. But at the end, it's just like a bunch of ifs, and like regular expressions. Yeah. So like, I have those like two opinions about AI simultaneously in my head, and I don't know like which one I actually believe in more. Right. But I think that AI is both, risky and like it's a dangerous thing, and just like in the future it could get pretty dangerous. But at the same time, I feel like currently AI is just like a marketing gimmick.
Right. I mean, like the thing, like it's impressive, like with like neural networks, like being able to. I don't know if you saw that. There was like a scene from The Office that like an H3 fan was like put Ethan Ela's face on Kevin and another character. I don't know if you saw that, but it was like really impressive. It was like one of the most impressive deepfakes I'd ever seen in my entire life. I mean, it's like it was like crazy good, and I mean, it even like captured like perfect eye movements and everything. And I was like, dang. But the fact is, like, using neural networks for like determining what people are doing, it's like, I don't know. Amazon is such a rich company, and they're so impervious to bad press, and like they're unafraid of moral bankruptcy, and they're just sticking these cameras in contractors' vehicles, right? These are contractors, right? Like these aren't even like employees. And it's like the reason why are they doing this, right?
Well, because sorry for interrupting you.
No,
but
go
like,
for it.
Yeah, they're not employees because you would have to actually like pay them living wage, pay for their health insurance. So that's why they're contractors. Like, right. But the fact that they're still slapping those cameras in there, this is insane.
Right, and the fact that like you're putting these cameras in there to squeeze every ounce of humanity out of like these workers who are prone to slacking off or even taking a break once in a while.
Oh, terrible!
And it's like, I don't know, Deborah, I don't know, Deborah Bass, maybe. She's an Amazon spokesperson, told CNBC that the company has begun this program across its entire fleet. And she said, quote, "We are investing in safety across our operations and recently started rolling out industry-leading camera-based safety technologies across the entire fleet." Oh, they're doing it for safety. Forget everything I just said.
Yeah, safety argument. Never heard that one before.
Yeah, national security.
Yeah, just imagine like you decided to like take a break and like I don't know eat a sandwich between deliveries, and then you just like from your wagon you're hearing worker number 2.5 come back to your to your labor. How do you say it? Wait, come back to your vehicle immediately to avoid penalty.
Yeah.
You have 10
You will
seconds.
be docked pay. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
20 seconds
It's
until
terrifying.
demolition.
Right. Yeah. Imagine being like not the contractor and hearing that and then going, "Hey, that sounds like a great advertisement for Amazon. I'm going to go buy something."
Yeah, I'm gonna like buy their Prime subscription for sure.
Yeah. Yep. Ugh, Amazon. I honestly, there was a time there was a moment where like I hadn't bought anything from Amazon in like 2 years. And then I had to like buy something and I don't remember what it was. It might have been like an SSD or something. And I could have got it from Newegg, but shipping was like 2 weeks and it was also $50 more expensive
Yep.
for the same item. And I was like, oh, I cannot, you know, and that's the problem that we face is it's like they are just too good at what they do.
Exactly.
And it's scary.
At the same time, like people don't realize, maybe they do realize, but they don't care that like those, the fact that it's safer. It's not because Amazon is like a good guy, and that they're just basically working, like basically like making a loss to be like a good company and to try to like get more customers. They're cutting corners in the places where I think a company shouldn't cut corners, just out of like basic human decency. And like as we discussed, just like these worker conditions and just the kind of working tempo and the health insurance like that they don't provide for some workers. So like that's the price you have to pay in order to get like your purchase a bit cheaper, maybe like $2 cheaper. I mean, in some cases, as you said, it can be $50 cheaper, but at the same time, they also have this very I don't know, laissez-faire, you could say, return policy, to where like you can even return like an item already opened, already used or worn, and they wouldn't really check, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people, like when they have to come back to like your normal companies that don't operate at like a huge revenue like Amazon does, they're kind of like frustrated because my shipping, like the shipping takes not 1 day but like 3 days or like even a week sometimes. Yeah. And also if I don't like something and I have to return it, they actually have to check if it still works, and they have to check if it's the same condition. It's so annoying. I'm just gonna go back to Amazon.
Yeah, that's the thing. One of the things that I ordered from Amazon and then I ended up returning it was a analog video capture device, right?
Analog.
And yeah, like it had like a composite, a component, no.
The S-video thingy?
Yeah.
All right.
So like S-video and like the yellow RCA composite.
Mm-hmm.
So like I bought this thing, it didn't work. And it had a Toslink audio input cable, and it had a like infrared remote that you could use to like switch between the different inputs on the thing.
Okay.
So I packed the thing back up, I sent it back to Amazon, and then I realized that like I had already taken the Toslink cable and put it in my box with other cable in my desk with other cables, and I forgot to include the remote to send it back with them. They didn't even care. Like they just refunded me the entire thing, even though it was missing 2 of the things that came with the device.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Exactly.
It's nuts. How can they make money that way?
Uh,
It's the economy of scale, you know.
something even like more wild happened to me. I basically ordered a mini HDMI to HDMI cable, and then
Mhm.
like when it came, I discovered that actually my camera has a micro HDMI input and not mini HDMI. So I
Mm.
wanted to return the cable. So I clicked like, they asked like why do you want to return it, and I just click and the item is like not compatible or doesn't work for the intended purpose. And then they were like, here's a refund, keep the item, don't send it back, we don't care. That was like an
I
Amazon
heard that they
Basics
started doing.
cable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not worth money to like to ship it back and then restock it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's crazy. Yeah, Amazon. I just like, wow. It's yeah. So we fixed the problem with disinformation on the internet. Let's fix the Amazon problem now.
Oh yeah. That's definitely easier than, than trying to make sense of what's like Orwellian and what's not on the social
Right.
medias.
Personally, I think like having a vertical monopoly like Amazon is trying to build when it comes to like shipping and warehousing and having the front end like on their store or whatever. I don't think a company should be allowed to have like a vertical monopoly like that.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
Walmart was doing that too. Like Walmart has like distribution and they have warehousing and they have the storefronts, and it's like I don't think that that's a fiscally responsible thing to allow. It's not prudent to the consumer to
Yeah.
allow that.
There was the talk of breaking up Google, right? Like I think
Yeah.
Brian Lundig mentioned at some point that we need to break up Google, and just a lot of people in general were talking like along those lines. But like, did something come out of it? Because I remember that they now have Alphabet, which does everything that Google did, and they have Google, which does like one thing. I'm not sure exactly what they're doing, but like nothing fundamentally changed, right? They just changed the name basically.
So I'm pretty sure that Larry Page and Sergey Brin just founded another company and then bought Google from themselves by that with that company.
Oh
So
my
there wasn't
God.
even like it wasn't even like a like a FEC like enforcement thing. Like they were not broken up. Like Alphabet just bought the company from themselves. Like which
Hmm.
is bananas to me.
Yeah, that's
But
just
I mean, Google and Amazon and Facebook and all these other companies need to be broken up. And I won't apologize for believing that. Like, I really like it's not responsible to allow these companies to be so massive and have so much influence and be able to you know, just spy on everything you do for every waking moment of your life. It doesn't matter if you're
yeah.
on the clock working as an Amazon contractor and they have AI equipped cameras in the back of your van. It doesn't matter if you're, an Android user and Google's spying on you all the time. Like these companies should not be able to do that. And I think that there's like too much of a profit incentive for them to do it as well. Like I don't think it's enough to just break up these companies. I think like there should be some kind of like fine, like a crazy steep fine that would like financially disincentivize these companies from like acquiring and holding on to your data, right? Like
Hmm.
let's say that you have let's say that you are you're a company and you have like a data breach, right? I think that if you're a company and you have a data breach like on a massive scale like Equifax, you should be fined out of existence, right? Like I don't know if you heard about the Equifax
Oh
thing, but it was
yeah,
like,
yes I did. It
dude,
was something.
it's crazy to me that this company is still allowed to exist when so many people had their information, like very sensitive information, leaked. And it's like there should be so much financial disincentive to be holding on to and storing this magnitude of personal information, that it's just not worth it for these companies to risk spying on you all the time.
Exactly. And I know that like a lot of people would at this point they would say, well, we shouldn't like slap them with the fine. We should just let people decide, and The hand on the market will basically put the Equifax out of existence. But at the same time, whereas that might be true with, consumer companies like Google and Facebook, and it's not. I may elaborate on that like later, but whatever. Equifax, this is not like the kind of a company that you choose to give your data over to. As far as I know, they were just basically sorry. As far as I know, they were just processing data from like a lot of banks, and so if you're using like a popular bank, if you're a customer of like, I don't know, Bank of America, let's say. I don't know if Equifax was working with Bank of America, but let's assume it does for a second. You don't choose to give your data to Equifax. Your bank does. And yes, of course, you could read like the, I don't know, 120 pages contract written in small like fonts to see that, we're using a third-party partner, Equifax, for processing the data. Like a lot of times you don't really have a choice. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. And the fact is, like, the hand of the market is how we got into this situation that we're in already.
True.
Right? Like people don't worry about like where their phone was manufactured and what conditions the people who made that phone were working in. People don't worry about like if the 5G infrastructure has been infiltrated by the Chinese Communist Party. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why we have regulations and why we have government that is effective, or it's at least that's the concept behind having a government that actually works. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, it's crazy to me to think, oh, well, we should just let people decide like what programs they want to use or like what websites they want to use. And if they don't like the surveillance, they can just, no, it's like, dude, if you go out into public and someone has an Android phone, like it's listening to what you're saying. You know, if you go out to a store that has like a new what do they call it, a surveillance system in that store, they're doing like facial recognition on you. You know what I'm saying? And like it's like it's not enough to just say, oh, let it be. You know, just let it be and see what happens. No, we're at a point now where we can't afford that kind of naive social whatever you want to call it, like social whateverism.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like if people have to consent to like using a certain product, it has to be an educated consent. And like no matter how long like you want to talk about how, oh, we have to educate people, they're just willfully ignorant, tech illiterate normies, and like they deserve being spied on or whatever. I feel like that's a pretty cynical approach. And at the same time, you don't expect every person on the planet to know everything about everything. You know, I shouldn't be a PhD of like computer science to have a right like not to be spied on.
Right.
So like at the same time about the whole like legislation thing, I'm not sure if I know, enough about like, economics and like, the political legislations and like business law, because like a lot of times some laws and like regulations that have like, a good aim in mind, they have like a good cause, they tend to actually like make things worse. I mean, that's kind of an obvious thing. But yeah, like I don't know if I'm comfortable with saying I want those companies broken up because at the same time it could introduce a much worse consequences. Yeah, exactly, for like the end users and consumers.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Is like I can sit here as an armchair, congressperson or whatever, and try and say, oh yeah, like I think I have all the answers, but that's why we elect people who hopefully are smarter than we are, or at least are capable of like weighing those options. I don't know. I just feel like I know everything, and I have already fixed all the problems of the world inside my head. And everyone should listen to me.
Right. I mean, you're not alone in that.
All right, so I feel like this has been a good episode. I have a question here from Jackson on Twitter. Jackson asked, for general consumers, what do you believe is the best option for a privacy-respecting phone? This goes in line with what we've been talking about. Linux phones like the Purism Librem 5, or ASOP like Graphene or Calyx OS, which I don't even heard of Calyx OS, or an iPhone disconnected from iCloud. What do you think?
So personally, this is gonna rile up a lot of people, but I feel like iPhone is a good option. Like basically,
Yeah.
if we would compare, stock Android on like Samsung and Xiaomi and even like Google phones and stock iPhones are generally better for privacy and security for like a normal user. The
Yes.
reason why is because there was this scientific study. I don't know if you could call it an article or like a study that basically captured all the packets from Android, like from an Android device and then from an iPhone device. And it, like, if I'm not wrong, basically Android phones home like 10 or 100 times more than like iPhone does in its stock condition. And like if you, at the same time, if you like, leave the whole privacy subject and like, if you talk about like security, Apple devices also have full disk encryption by default, which Android, they do have that as well. I believe
But it depends on the vendor, right?
Exactly, yes.
Yeah. The key word here is for general consumers, right? Like that's the key here. For general consumers, Graphene OS and whatever else, like that's not something that like a normal person is going to know how to flash onto a phone. I don't think so. iPhone, even if it's connected to iCloud, iPhones are still like, I know I read the article that you're talking about. Like the iPhone called home like 4 times a day, and an Android phone, it was like I think it was like 5 times an hour, right? Like pinging, like sending like your location data back to the service. And yeah, 4 times a day is still pretty invasive in my opinion. But like the fact that like, you could be at home or at work, like, your iPhone's going to know, oh, he went to work and then came home, versus Android knowing he went to the bathroom at 2:10 p.m. You know what I'm saying? Like, like that's the difference. And as far as like Linux phones are concerned, I think they're not there yet. But at the same time, like, dude, the rapid progress of the Librem 5 has been astounding to watch. Like, I mean, I have 4 Librem 5 sitting on my desk. I have 5 of them. They've sent me a bunch to like actually to review for my channel, and it's like just the hardware iterations and the software iterations have like been explosive. And so like the idea of like Pure OS getting to a point where you don't have to be a Linux expert in order to just use this device, I think it's like not that unreasonable to think that that's going to be the case in a couple years. But then you're contending with like the availability of apps and services that people are already looking for, or come to expect on their phone. So it's a hard question. It's like, should someone use an iPhone or a dumb phone? Like that's really like if a general consumer is concerned about their privacy, they have 2 options: iPhones or dumb phones.
Exactly. Yes. Linux phones, I do feel like you said, they're making like they have come very far. I guess that you could say that. Like since like the past like year, or like since I'm following Librem and like Pine Phone as well. Yeah. But they're not ready for prime time, and they're probably not going to be ready for prime time in the foreseeable future, especially for your like average Joe consumer.
Yeah, I have a Pine Phone here too. I have Manjaro on it, and it's really nice. There's a lot of things that I like about it, but like the build quality is like a cheap like Android phone for like $10 that you'd get from like TrackPhone at Walmart,
Yeah,
it's like,
see.
I mean, it's probably a step up from that, but it's still like nowhere near the same build quality as like a Librem 5. But yeah, it's like, and also like from what I understand, the Pine Phone is meant as like a development thing more than anything else at this point. Maybe in the future, like Pure OS and Manjaro on a Pine Phone will be at a point where they're, they have the battery life, they have the privacy, they have like at least PWAs and stuff that can kind of help people muddle through in the services that they want.
True. There's also one thing I wanted to mention. It's I don't know if you heard about them. The Apple's nutritional labels for like privacy in the App Store. This is like
I haven't.
Yeah, exactly. So they're like with the new version, I think 14.5, they want to introduce those so-called nutritional labels for privacy, which are basically like very, very simple like explanations of what a certain app would know about you and what kind of info it would collect about you and where this info would go. Yeah. And as you imagine, Facebook is very angry. They're not happy about it at all. So Facebook has been like kind of like posting very emotional like statements, being like, oh, Apple is hurting the business, like the small business with their like I don't want to say Orwellian because it's a running gag at this point, but with their like authoritarian like legislations that like would basically they would basically cripple the businesses and like won't allow them to spy on users or whatever. So basically, like their like point is that Apple will tell people in like very simple language what Facebook is doing with their data, and people are not going to like it. Yeah.
Well, the nice thing about the Lemur 5, actually, this is an idea that I think Apple might have been inspired by the PureOS store. PureOS tells you like what kind of permissions the app will need when it's installed. Like the idea that, I mean, I just looked it up and this looks really nice. I mean, this is the kind of thing that I want from like an Android device, from like the Play Store or something.
Don't they already have that?
Do they? I don't know. I don't use the Play Store that often.
Oh, okay.
But it's something that is like really important, and it's nice to see it, even if it's like, part of me feels like it's just marketing speak at the same time.
True. Yeah, that's true.
But at least Apple like is invested in like letting you know that they care. You know what I'm saying? Like, quote unquote, they care.
I see. Yeah, they're kind of like trying to oppose Google because Google is seen as this like privacy invasive company, and like Apple is basically like the champion of privacy, and they want you to like they want your data to be secure. They want you to be private. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I also noticed that if you take the permission system in like Google Play and Android, they're kind of being vague about it sometimes. Like, they would just say this app wants to have access to your internal storage. So like a normal user would be like, yeah, okay, sure, it's fine. But Apple goes like, they'll be able to see all your pictures and like all your videos. And people are like, whoa, that's okay. No, I don't want that.
Yeah, I mean that's like one of the reasons that like I think Apple is like better for your privacy. I won't say that they are good for your privacy, but they are better by comparison than Google is.
Yeah, the smaller evil.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, this has been a great conversation. Thank you for being here, man.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, this was great.
Yeah, dude, if you guys out there want to hear more from Wolfgang, let us know, because I want to get back into doing this show, and I've had a lot of fun. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk again soon.
Bye.